Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of November 7th through the 13th of 2022. Alright, so a very important week here astrologically. We have a lunar eclipse here around the Monday and Tuesday time period. This is the halfway point of the solar eclipse cycle. It started about 2 weeks ago, and so now it's a great time to do a status check. How is this lunar month? How has been the past 2 weeks? Perhaps even the past 6 months, being this being such an important part of the year for shifts and changes. So eclipse seasons such as this are very important for changes to our life path. In this case, examining how things are going, making those shifts and changes, and perhaps setting off onto a new journey with this lunar eclipse conjunct the North Node and in more initiating Aries. So with this, we also do have the Sun and Mercury scoring up to Saturn here just after that around Thursday. And so a little bit of limitations to work within, or perhaps some things that require patience or perseverance can be great to work within constructively. And Venus and Mercury will be trining up to Neptune, so that'll be towards the later part of the week as well. And this could be a bit flowing. Trines to Neptune, the spiritual planet, could be good for maybe flowing in those communications, with learning things, and maybe in those relationships as well. And just some other minor aspects that really add to what is a very transformative week collectively. All right, so let's go and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here is the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, November 7th. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. And you will notice a lot of the signs are different. For example, we're saying that a lot of energy is in Libra, which is, we're saying this, but collectively or in mainstream astrology, they're saying it's in Scorpio, perhaps. Or this lunar eclipse, you may have heard it being said in the mainstream that it's in Taurus. But if you do look up at the visible sky, you will see it in Aries. So we're taking into account the actual size of the constellations, the visible sky. And so if you are new to this channel, definitely check out that link down below for more information. All right, so lunar eclipse week, very important. It's going to be around the early Tuesday time for most of us. I will, of course, make a separate eclipse video on this specifically, but this is certainly the highlight of the week. And it really marks the halfway point of the lunar month, and where we often make important shifts and changes, right? And in this context, it is going to be in the constellation of Aries, where we've had the North Node enter and where we've had Uranus for the past almost few years. Well, actually a good solid few years now. So in this case, a great time to do a status check with particularly our initiating side, right? How are we taking initiative in our life? Perhaps regarding things that do involve our goals, our short-term ambitions, our needs, who we are, what we want, right? And, starting to incorporate some of this energy perhaps in a totally different way. Lunar eclipses, which is very much like a full moon type of energy, is all about this being illuminated, right? What are our deeper needs? How are we taking initiative? How can we cultivate more of that assertiveness, right? And proactivity and action in our lives, right? And so with this awareness comes the usually implementation of it, and that's typically what this week will be. These types of weeks are about, is implementing a bit of that initiating energy there in this case. And conjunct up to Uranus, this is very much about breaking free. Collectively, this has been a lot of changes collectively with independence, with needs, right? And all this boiling under the surface. And so personally, it's the same thing. Right? How can we induce some of this change, some of this freedom, some of this revolutionary energy into our lives constructively, right? And with the North Node, it is all about new beginnings, right? North Node's the new life path. It's the new karma, quote unquote, that we're building and what's needed in the physical world. So good to, again, set intentions for new things specifically. Aries being both the constellation of new things, being the first constellation of the Zodiac, but of course also the North Node here. And Uranus is also very much a yang energy about new changes as well. Now with all that, keeping in mind that Mars is retrograde. Mars, the planet of, who rules Aries, that is the planet of initiative and assertiveness. And so a lot of this is supposed to be going through a reworking process all the way through January 13th, once Mars does go direct at that time. But right now it's important to be reflecting on our needs, who we are, what we want, and really experimenting. Oftentimes we hear retrogrades as times to not do things, but it's actually great times to do things as long as we are adaptive. We have a plan A, B, C, and D, and it's really about learning and going back and redoing things and reworking things, right? So in the context of needs, who we are and what we want, it's good to allow for some of that reflection, redoing, experimenting. And in Taurus, about taking things slowly, one step at a time, in that more grounded, resourceful way, which is how collectively we'll be taking action with Mars here. Okay, so that's, again, early Tuesday. We'll be feeling this Monday as well. We may even be feeling this as early as the previous weekend. And, the shifts and changes likely around that Tuesday time period, as we'll then continue the lunar month here. Okay. So all these planets are opposite that in Libra. And so while that's going on, it's good really all week to still be focused on balance. Libra is, in this case, the time of the year, and especially with Mercury and Venus being so close to the Sun right now this year in Libra, it's important for balance. So in our personal lives, seeing if there's any areas that are out of balance, or, and perhaps bringing those back into balance. Or perhaps while we're initiating and asserting our needs and, cultivating such a self-interested energy like Aries, to also make sure we're not rocking the boat too much, that we maintain balance in our own life and also in our relationships, as Libra does tend towards a lot of relating energy, being that it's about balance in our interpersonal relationships, how we're relating with others, coming to mutual agreement, reciprocating, balancing our needs with others' needs. All right. And so this balanced approach, I think, is great. We're focused on life in this way. We've perhaps released some karma with this last week over the South Node regarding relating and balance, when the fast-moving planets went over the South Node last week. Mercury's here is how we're thinking, how we're communicating, and Venus, what we're enjoying, what we're valuing, and how we could be connecting in those relationships. So a lot of energy there makes the interpretation very straightforward. And this is great all week, as these planets will still be here all week, which is maintaining balance in our life personally and interpersonally, and as a result helping balance out a lot of that fiery energy and perhaps erratic energy with this lunar eclipse in Aries conjunct Uranus here. Okay, so that's definitely the important thing here, this particularly early part of the week. And as we make some shifts and changes, we'll probably be incorporating these for the remainder of the week into next year. As with them being the disseminating phase of the cycle later in the week, which is about implementation of the heightened lunar eclipse. So this early part of the week, we also have some squares with Saturn. Venus will be squaring Saturn early on Monday, followed by Mercury and the Sun. So Mercury will be squaring around the 8th and 9th, and then the Sun here a little bit later on the 10th and 11th. So really, we could just make a blanket statement and say that all week we have squares to Saturn. And Saturn's all about that patience and perseverance, taking things for the long term versus the short term. Now that is, as you might guess, a bit of a contradiction to this fiery energy of Aries, but not really. We can take initiative and, again, learn about our needs and all this, while also being patient, while also seeing the big picture. And I think that's a good way of working with it. It can be a very constructive week with these squares to Saturn. And, we can really build towards long-term things in our life. It can be very constructive when we intentionally, think long-term or do things that require patience and perseverance and these types of things. Okay, so early in the week, Monday, it'll be maybe involving more of the Venus things like relating and our values. That early to middle part, probably involving communication or learning. Maybe that's the Wednesday, Thursday with the square to Mercury, the planet of our minds and communications. And then with the Sun just after that here around the Thursday, Friday time period, which is generally good Saturn energy, patience, discipline, and all of that. Okay, and a lot of these other aspects you're seeing here are very much what's a part of that lunar eclipse we were talking about, with these planets also opposite Uranus. But again, finding that balance, and seeing ways of making changes and listening to our needs and our initiative while maintaining balance and focusing still on others' needs and on the relating side of things. Okay, but of course, again, I will make a separate video specifically on that eclipse. All right, so that's this whole early part of the week. It's worth noting that around the Wednesday time period, the moon will be shifting into Taurus, even though it will still be this very much Aries energy from the eclipse. Why is that not moving? 1 second. Oh, it won't let me. That's okay. So yeah, so the moon will be in Taurus here for pretty much the later work week. So from Wednesday all the way through Friday, okay, the moon will be in Taurus. And so that's a reminder again to slow things down, perhaps, to take things one step at a time, to stop and smell the roses. All right, these are the lessons of Taurus. I think those are always important coming out of the Aries energy, because while Aries is about cultivating the needs, Taurus is all about cultivating our values. And we really can't cultivate our values and the things we enjoy in life if we are rushing too much and whatnot. So good to connect to our inner groundedness and external groundedness as well. The moon actually loves to be here in Taurus, and so it's good to connect to things like nature or a good meal or some relaxation, right? More of that steady energy of life. Okay, so this later part, we do have trines to Neptune. Venus will be trining Neptune around the Thursday, and then the sun will be trining Neptune here around the Saturday, Sunday time period. And so this could be quite harmonious in a sense of, excuse me, not the sun, Mercury, excuse me. Mercury will be squaring Neptune, the weekend time period. This could be a bit harmonious because Neptune in trines tends to be easy to go with the flow. We're tending towards a little bit more receptivity, right? And so balancing out perhaps some of that more needing patience with the square to Saturn can be a willingness to be present and go with the flow a bit, and perhaps connect in a way that's a little compassionate or accepting, especially around the Thursday time when Venus trines Neptune. Right? Venus, the planet of relationships, will be in a nice harmony there with spiritual Neptune. And then Mercury here, particularly around Saturday. Okay, and this will be, maybe good for learning things or communicating in a way that's a bit receptive. And topping off the week here, Venus will be sextiling Pluto. Nothing major, but just an opening for a bit of depth, deeper energy in our relationships or in our values. Just a door opening for some of that. And really, it's the learning and communication energy that I think will be highlighted around the weekend, because of course that trine to Neptune with Mercury, the planet of our minds and communications, but also because the moon will be in Gemini here this Saturday and Sunday time period. Okay, so a great weekend here for learning and communication and using our practical minds and things of this nature. And by this point, we should be quite eased up out of that fiery lunar eclipse, even though, again, all week and even next week will be good for implementing this energy. All right, everyone, so that is the week in a nutshell. Most important thing is, of course, the elephant in the room, the lunar eclipse that we have here, which will be early Tuesday, but for all intents and purposes, the Monday, Tuesday, the days surrounding this time period. It's all about shifts and changes to our assertive side with Aries, how we're taking initiative, being aware of our needs and our goals and short-term ambitions, and perhaps making some shifts and changes there to cultivate more of that fire, more of that action. It might be a bit erratic being so close to Uranus. It's all about freedom, cultivating more freedom in our life, and really cultivating that individual self-expression, those individual needs, those very unique individuality needs, and so our unorthodox side, our eccentricities, these things that help us feel more excited and more attuned to our true self to be very much activated. And again, it's really suggesting nice steps in the new direction towards our life path, with it being next to the North Node there. We do have these squares to Saturn this week, so it's good for, again, that patience and long-term view, but can be very constructive with this. And and then while that's going on, it's a bit of receptivity with that Neptune, the spiritual planet. A bit easier to go with the flow a bit, or practice things like acceptance and presence and maybe some imagination, or sometimes quite literally spiritual things. Could be a good week for that. All right, all in the context of focusing on what's balanced in our life and in our relationships as well. or day-to-day dealings with others. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click the like button if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're not yet signed up for MTZ Insiders, it is a free newsletter where you do get these videos released first before YouTube and extra content not normally released on YouTube. So do check that out. It's a link down below. Have a great one, everyone, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.